Hi there, my name is Louis Taylor. I'm a composer based in Bristol. This video is about intimate music, and I want to give you some tips, 5 quick tips on how you can make your intimate, minimal sounding music better, and generally how to compose and write this style of music. I love this style of music because I feel like there's so much expressive capability and potential of this style, and it can really get to the core of certain issues, and I feel like it can really evoke certain emotions that a lot of other music would struggle to do in comparison to. Big thank you to David Fidel for requesting this video. So here are 5 quick tips on how to write intimate music. It's all in the arrangement. I would say that something to consider is that when you are writing intimate music, a lot of the time people are trying to, build up textures and stuff like that, and by the time you've used all your instruments at your disposal and you get to a certain point, you use so many instruments and your texture is so dense and thick that it loses that intimate quality. So that's why I say it's all in the arrangement, because you can make the most epic sounding music sound intimate by, making it a much smaller band, making a much smaller arrangement, and trying to bring out some of those more close and intricate details of the performance and of the instruments and of the players. That's not to say that it would sound as intimate as music that is written to be intimate. Of course, the more intimate sounding style would obviously work better in this form of arrangement, where you limit the players and musicians to an extent. But I think that it's important to keep your parts down a little bit. Try not to use too many parts at a time. Try to maybe stick to as few parts as you can to get the point across, basically. Be concise with this music, that you don't want to do too much doubling. If you have, there's obviously room for that, of course, because that can create new and wonderful tones. But I find that each instrument has their own character, and unless they're really well done to play together, there's a perfect counterpoint or they're in perfect unison, or obviously with chords it's different, but I find that if they are well done like this, it can be incredible. But it's much nicer when you allow space for them all to breathe and you limit your parts by a bit. Use small ensembles. If you want to write intimate music, don't use too many instruments, because each performer and each player needs their own space to breathe in the ambience of the music. Think of it like a conversation with people. The more people there are involved, the less people tend to open up, be honest, and share. If you have a one-on-one or a group of 4 friends and you are talking about something really quite deep and meaningful, it can be a lot more intimate and you can get your point across and there's no judgment. And that's exactly the same kind of thing when you have a small intimate band. I feel like it can really help give space to breathe for the instruments in the performance. They all have their own turn to speak. They all are able to get their point across. There's no cluster. There's no interruption. And not to say that shouldn't be done, because obviously sometimes clusters and interruptive type of music, can be really great. But in this sort of typical, Philip Glass, Oliver Arnolds, that kind of style, you quite often don't have that kind of music anyway. But it's completely up to you what you do at the end of the day. I'm just giving a tip on this style. It's pretty essential that you learn your performance techniques. What I mean by this is that you need to understand the different types of playing that an instrument can do. For example, one of the most well-known techniques on a piano is that you can put a layer of felt in front of the hammers on top of the strings, so that when the hammers attack the strings, the sound is softened. That does 2 things. First of all, it completely changes the tone. So obviously, like I say, it makes it much softer, more, it closes off with that high-end frequency. But also, it helps bring out the other quieter sounds of the piano that you wouldn't normally notice. For example, the sound of the actual hammer's mechanic in motion, as well as perhaps your fingers tapping on the keys. And these sounds are elevated, and they bring a whole new dynamic layer to the music. The same is to be said for this guitar here. If I was to, do that onto it, I'm muting it with my fingers here. It's very different to going. You see? So I'm changing the technique of playing, and that in turn changes the effect of the sound. There's all sorts of reasons you would want to do this. You can do it with almost any instrument, and a lot of them make the sound more intimate, and they change the quality in a way that you might want or desire in this style of music. Capture these small and intricate details with your microphone. I really like finding out those little nooks and crannies, those little pieces of sound that make the texture so much more rich. For example, your finger sliding up a fret on a guitar, or the tap of your finger on a keyboard key, or the breath behind a flautist's note. Those sorts of things can only really be captured by close microphones, and that's why I like to use them so much in my recordings. I feel like they bring a huge depth of character and expression to the music that you can get from these microphones that you wouldn't otherwise get from just a stage microphone or a tree mic or ambient mics. I think that those microphones are incredible and great, especially for orchestral music, and they're great generally speaking too, because they capture the sound of the room you're in, which is important as well. I quite like to bring up those close mics in the mix to bring that level of realism too. Have a little listen to this. I'll demonstrate what I mean. So I'm just jumped into Logic Pro here, where I've got a little bit of a string quartet going on with the BBC Symphony Orchestra string sections with the leaders playing. The great thing about this library is that you can use all these different microphone positions for mixing purposes and make use of this close mic technique that I'm talking about. So currently I have got a lot of the close mic and a little bit of the primary mix to give it some of that extra room quality. Now if I turn the mix all the way down, now all you're hearing is closed mics. I like that, but you get so much detail in there, but I think that a nice amount of room quality, just pull this up a little bit, adds a little bit of depth and quality to the track, and I think a perfect mix of this is great for the intimate purpose, and the closed mics have such a great utility. Now for my final tip. Focus on harmony and texture as your primary expressive tools. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that you can't use melody, but I would argue that a lot of intimate music is written with the primary concern being harmony and texture. And also probably, it's fair to say, tonality as well. But I would say that in the more modern styles, tonality and harmony are so closely linked that it's all just kind of a blur. If you do use melodies, and by all means, obviously, do whatever feels right to you. But I would use long, drawn-out melodies in this style. Now, this is a vast generalization, but I think that it tends to be something that works quite well in this style. Of course, there is no right or wrong on this field, so please, if you want to write a melody, go ahead, don't let me stop you, do whatever feels right. As for the textural side of things, it's important to consider how it affects the piece. I think the most important thing to consider when talking about texture is contrast, because the previous texture compared to the one that comes after it is kind of what makes those different textures effective. If you go from a single instrument to 8 instruments, like a full band, over the course of a minute or 30 seconds, then that's going to feel much more gradual and the build-up will be slight. But if you go from 1 instrument to 8 instruments in just 3 seconds or 1 second, you have 30 seconds of single instrument, and suddenly you have a big kind of all of them join in. This doesn't need to be a bang, it could be a very smooth chord or something. That might be more striking. Ultimately, it's all about how it feels to you, so try different textures and utilize contrast. As a bonus remark, I wanted to add that using real people is the key to all of this. If you don't use real people, you can't really hope to achieve the same level of intimacy that you would without that. Sample libraries are great and sometimes they can capture some amazing quality, but I feel that the expressive capability of a real person doesn't even compare. Yeah, it's just so much. It's on a different plane of existence. If you use real players, it will transform your music from being good and perhaps even beautiful to heavenly. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the view and your time. Please consider liking the video, it really helps me out, and do subscribe. There'll be a lot more of this sort of content coming along soon. I'm really trying my best to be regular with this sort of thing. And please leave a comment if you enjoyed the video or not. I'd love to hear from you regardless. And so thanks so much once again, and I hope you have a good day. See you later. Bye for now.